Welcome to Watch Diary. My name is Ryan Snelling. I'm excited to be back with you on this beautiful day. It is Sunday, March 19th. It's nice and shiny and bright outside. Kind of cold, but it's all good. We're going to have a warm week this week, and I'm just feeling great in general. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode Brando and I did this past Wednesday, I believe, Hot Takes and Sausage. It was episode 1 officially. I think we're going to be doing that weekly, hopefully. It's just a good time. Me and Brando can just sit down and chat, and maybe pop culture comes up, maybe not. Who knows? Maybe we'll just talk about John Campea and Kill Tony the whole time. Either way, it's always a good time hanging out with Brando. And if enough people like what we're doing on Hot Takes and Sausage, I'll make it its own podcast feed. Because I don't know, if the way that it's going, it might not fit on the Watch Diary podcast. But we'll see. Either way, I'm happy to be here. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to review Shazam 2. I can talk a little bit about The Last of Us, probably, a little bit of Mandalorian. I think I want to talk more about John Campea again. And I want to talk about James Gunn and Warner Brothers and Snyder fans. All of that. We might as well just go straight into that, I think. Because I don't have a whole lot of housekeeping to do. Yeah, I don't think so. Let's just go right into that. And plus, I've been kind of appreciating the shorter podcast lately. So let's just dive right into it. So I want to talk about... Let's talk about The Mandalorian first. Because that'll be the quickest. I just think that this season of The Mandalorian is terrible. I really do. There are moments within this season that have been fun to watch. But I think this is the least I have ever enjoyed this show. And the fact that we just had the lowest rated episode ever... The fact that the season 3 premiere was the lowest viewed premiere of all, I feel like other people are picking up on this. Star Wars, it's hard to gauge because no matter how many people hate it or love it, it's still very popular. So it's hard to gauge why people aren't tuning in, but I think it's just losing interest. Honestly, I think it's losing people's interest. And what's weird is that as we go further, and this is one of the reasons why it's hard to tell sometimes with Star Wars, as we go further along, it starts to tie in more and more to the other Star Wars animated shows that I don't have that much of an appreciation or knowledge of. But the fact that we're doing so much with Mandalore and Bo-Katan, I mean, it's all new to me as somebody who's never seen Clone Wars, as somebody who's never finished Rebels. There's a lot going on that goes over my head, but I don't feel like I'm lost necessarily. I think if I watch that other stuff, it would just help supplement. But at the end of the day, this TV show it's TV show, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, The Mandalorian is The Mandalorian, and especially when you compare it to Andor. And I don't like when people are like, oh, it's not fair to compare it to Andor. Of course you're going to compare it to Andor. And you should. Because both are products of the same company, of Lucasfilm and Star Wars. And if one is clearly better than the other, then that means that Lucasfilm has to get their shit together. Because all that says is that, hey, you're capable of Andor, but you choose to be, I don't know what it is, complacent or lazy or whatever it is. You choose to not be capable when you produce The Mandalorian. And I think that's honestly piss poor. I mean, we call the same shit out for Marvel projects, right? We have all these great Marvel projects. So it hurts a lot worse when Marvel shits out shit because we know what they're capable of. Well, same with Star Wars. Like Disney Star Wars, say what you will, but Andor is something that they got right. And the first reason and the first thing that is so vastly different between the two shows is the writing and characterization. The Mandalorian still, there's no characterization whatsoever to this character of Din Djarin. Because I don't know why he wants any of the shit that he wants. Why does he care about being a Mandalorian? Why does he care about being redeemed? They're blank vessels carrying us through this adventure of the week, side quest of the week, and there are so little through lines, so little threads that actually, I don't know what the story is. I just don't know what the story is. And the fact that really every episode it just seems like we're going to planets that we don't need to go to fill time. We see characters that we don't need to spend time with. I'll be honest, the Amy Sedaris character, the one who works on the ships on Tatooine, she doesn't even belong in Star Wars, in my opinion. I get that she's loose and fun, and yeah, there's loose and fun in Star Wars, but she does not fit in. I think she actually fits in worse than Bill Burr's character in The Mandalorian. I'm not going to lie. It's too over the top. And so when we do all these things that just seem pointless, I don't really know what the storytelling is. I just don't know why I'm supposed to tune in every week. I have no idea. It's getting redundant. I still don't know why we have Grogu. There's no characterization. And with Andor, all of the writing there, the directions there, I'm just tired of seeing the Mandalorian walk around with people and just have empty conversations about their empty missions, and it is all meaningless to me. All of it. And I just expect better. And the fact that, look, I'm a fan of television. I got into TV because of Damon Lindelof and shows like Lost and The Leftovers and modern TV nowadays. We are not unfamiliar with bottle episodes. We are not unfamiliar with taking time out of our season to tell one singular story about one particular character. The Last of Us, episode 3, with Nick Offerman. That kind of episode. This is not new. So I am not complaining about the type of episode that we got with The Mandalorian. The problem is, if you're going to tell a story, don't have it just come from out of nowhere. Have it pertain to the overall narrative while also exploring whatever you're trying to get across. Now, is it possible that we learn more, that we find out that everything that we saw in this episode it comes back up later in the season? Yes. But as far as I'm concerned, we watched a bottle episode from a character that took place in another season in a setting that we just saw in Andor, done a million times better, and there wasn't any connective tissue to anything else that had gone on in the season. So, in a weird way, if this was in any other show or any other season, this could have been the best episode of the season. But it doesn't. It's like the pieces don't fit. It's like you're trying to put two puzzle pieces together, and one of them is just a little bit too big, and you can't fit it in, and it's like you finally have to give up and realize these don't go together. I know they're supposed to, and we're trying to make it, but it's just way too all over the place right now. And I don't know why I keep watching it. I really don't. I don't know if it's just because it seems bite-sized and maybe it's something I don't have to care about. I can just mindlessly see if the special effects are cool. I thought the dogfighting, if you call it that, on Mandalore or whatever the planet is that him and Bo-Katan were on, I thought all of that was actually pretty good. But again, empty, mindless. I don't care about the characters. So I just don't understand The Mandalorian or Star Wars or Lucasfilm anymore. I really don't. But I love that, like, I'm not seeing like an overwhelming amount of people that are just freaking out and loving it. Like, I seem to be kind of on the same page with people, and that kind of feels good because I kind of got tired of talking shit about Star Wars and Marvel. I get tired of it because I don't want to be the people. I don't want to be the toxic people online that just like make hate headlines out of this shit. But it's so obviously, when you can compare it to things that the same studio makes, it's just a lot less glaring. And so, and it's way beyond the fact that like Mandalorian and Andor have different DNA in terms of shows. Like, The Mandalorian can still be a procedural if it wants, but at the end of the day, it's just not good. And Star Wars continues to not make sense because Andor, I think, is clearly the better show, but it's the one that's like rejected more. I don't know. Anyway, I don't get it. Speaking of things I don't get, let's talk about the state of Warner Brothers and DC for a minute, because this has been percolating on my mind for a while. Now, here's what I'm going to speak to. The fact that Warner Brothers has been mishandling DC since 2013 when Man of Steel came out for various reasons. It was an overly reactive studio. It tried to put the cart before the horse and tried to replicate everything that Marvel was doing too early. It didn't trust in its visionary, pioneering filmmaker in Zack Snyder, which you can debate whether they should have in the first place. Personally, I don't think they should have. Zack Snyder's not the dude because he's such a singular vision and such a polarizing vision that, like, maybe you shouldn't have done it in the first place. But regardless of that, DC has been lacking for a decade. Sometimes they put out a good movie, but most of the time they don't. And all of the time it's incoherent or not cohesive. So, what we've seen in real time over the last couple of years is them slowly distancing themselves from the Snyder-verse while kind of having their cake and eating it too, because they kind of kept the same actors and kind of tried to make new movies implementing the Snyder-verse, which, like, is actually something to be commended. Like, does it piss me off when they shit out a bad movie? Sure. But make a good movie and then kind of tie it into the Snyder-verse so they try to keep it together even though they have all this PR nightmare going on. I actually think it's respectable. Because at the end of the day, if they could have just, like, continued to build upon the Snyder-verse with good movies, I think it would have been okay. Now, I think the original Shazam is a way that they did that when they, introduced Freddie Freeman, who's a big fan of Batman and Superman. They used the Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck logos for the Batarang and everything, and they used the Man of Steel Henry Cavill suit at the end of Shazam, even though it's a joke that they don't see his head. They try, along the way, they try to make a radically different Birds of Prey movie to build off of Suicide Squad, and obviously the studio is not proud of that movie, but they tried with continuity to make it work. So I commend them for that. But ultimately, that I don't know if that was the problem. It was the fact that they just happened to be bad movies that were doing it. So the past couple of years, David Zaslav takes over Warner Brothers, and Zack Snyder's out, and everybody's out. But they still have movies that are in production based on that idea when they hire Peter Safran and James Gunn to head Warner Brothers Studios. So, the pro-Snyder fans, the Snyder-verse fans, and the anti-James Gunn fans, at this point, are morons. They're morons. I see this every day on Twitter. This vicious bile that is pro Zack Snyder, anti James Gunn, and it's all bullshit. All of it's bullshit. What isn't bullshit is being a fan of a movie. So if you like Man of Steel, if you like Batman v Superman, if you like those movies, that's fine. I can find things that I like about all of them. But what these rabid fan bases have become is that they are so blind to any other possibility or any other outcome other than Zack Snyder needs to do this entire thing by himself and James Gunn should stay the hell away. And this idea that the Snyder fans can't move on, it's a huge problem. Because the Snyderverse fans, whether they're a fan of the thing or not, they have to recognize that it didn't work for the studio. Now, can you blame the studio heads? For sure. Are those people gone? All gone? Yes, they are. They are all gone. Kevin Tsujihara, all those people that ran Warner Brothers when Zack Snyder was running they're all gone. So they're not there anymore. Okay? So the fact that Zack Snyder, what happened to him was terrible. The fact that he got fired, a family tragedy, the reshoots, the Joss cut of Justice League, all of that was terrible. And I'm not saying it's not. But when the Snyder-verse fans can't let go of the fact that it is over and needs to be over, it's just their problem at this point. So the fact that they are now attaching all of this hate to James Gunn as he's trying to build a universe, it's absolute bullshit. It's bullshit, and it's childish, is what it is. So James Gunn has done almost nothing to show that he is incapable of the position that he's done. Now, just like any other comic book movie director, are they, controversial in terms of, does everybody like every James Gunn movie? No. Does everybody like The Suicide Squad? I don't know. Not a lot of people saw it. But in terms of James Gunn writing and directing and producing the things that he's it hasn't even happened yet. It hasn't even happened yet. James Gunn has not made, other than The Suicide Squad, James Gunn has not made his first project under his watch as studio head. It hasn't happened yet. So when Shazam 2 comes out, and so far it is not impressing at the box office, when people use that as ammo to say, oh, fire James Gunn, fire Peter Safran, they are reaching so hard to have a problem because they just aren't considering the fact that that movie was greenlit, produced, filmed, and under post-production before James Gunn was involved. So just because James Gunn is the studio of Warner Brothers, or the head of DC today, the weekend that Shazam 2 came out, that doesn't mean that it's on James Gunn at all. Other than he's going to be worried about and technically Shazam 2, I think it's under New Line because DC Studios is a brand new studio and Shazam is under New Line. So it might not even bother James Gunn that it's a failure. It might not even affect him because it's it might be a different production. I don't know how much that blends in together, but it might not affect him at all. But people are calling this a James Gunn failure and want to use this as ammo to get rid of James Gunn. You're idiots. And you don't know how movies or Hollywood works. You're idiots. And so the fact that you want Zack Snyder to come back to do this, why would you expect Zack Snyder to spend another second on this? Why wouldn't you let Zack Snyder, as the visionary filmmaker he is, move on to what he wants to do now that he's working for a company that is letting him do it? Like, I don't even know why people are still discussing Zack Snyder running DC. It makes no sense. And honestly, I think part of it's on Zack Snyder. I don't think he helps the situation. Part of it is. But it's mostly about the brats and the children that literally just can't move on and get over it. So what I'm seeing now is, everybody wants to talk about how James Gunn cast his now wife in the Suicide Squad. And so they use that character again as a common thread in other projects, so they're giving him shit for it. But again, she was put in the movie by another filmmaker before he was even studio head. It just none of it logically matches up. But I just see this vicious bile on Twitter from morons who literally just say things that are so stupid and so without thought. It's crazy. And I want to say I'm sick of it, but honestly, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because people don't change their minds. People don't think on the internet, and they're going to continue to not make any sense. And it's almost just like we have to deal with it. The people who, not everybody has to deal with it. Most people probably don't even have this bullshit in their algorithm on Twitter. But the fact that it's not even going to end when James Gunn puts out his first movie. Because then people are just going to, again, say that movie is bad and continue. And we'll be what? It'll be 2 more years, and we'll still be hearing about the Snyder-verse. It's crazy. In 2025, people are still going to say, fire James Gunn, bring back the Snyder-verse. And Zack Snyder is going to be like, I have to sneeze. Anyway. It's just something I keep seeing, and it drives me nuts. All right, let's talk about The Last of Us. I watched the finale. I know I'm late. It's been over a week, but I watched the Oscars the week before. Which, by the way, 8 out of 10 for my picks. Follow me on Instagram at RewatchRyan. So I watched The Last of Us finale last night. And keep in mind, I have not finished the video game. I think the only portion of the game that I've played up into is, and the only thing I can really compare it to is what I saw in the show. But I guess it's episode 2 in the show where the 3 of them are traveling. I can't remember the girlie's name. Joel's girlie at the beginning. When they're in the museum trapped with the 2 or 3 clickers, that's where I was in the game. So everything I've seen post her death, her demise, was completely new to me. And I had no idea. This game has never been spoiled for me. So I have no idea what's coming and what to expect. So, with that said, I was on the edge of my seat and really, really excited for this finale. And I guess this is my overall thoughts on the entire show, not just my finale reaction, but this show is wonderful. It's great. I love that we seem to, as a community, have a show that we can sit down and watch once a week. It was short-lived. I mean, only 9 weeks, and we have to wait at least a year probably to get part 2 or the next season, which it's great that part 2, the game, is going to be split up into multiple seasons apparently, which is awesome. What a shame, though, but it's like kind of good that we have something to look forward to. Here's the other thing, too. That reminds me of how long we have to wait for House of the Dragon. Hey, produce things faster. I'm sorry. Do it. I hate bringing up John Campea, but he has good points sometimes. He actually has a good point. It's like, it's so weird that network shows can do 20 plus episodes and have all that done and come back within a year, but you can't do 9 episodes within a year. It's always within 2 years. And I mean, fine, if you want to give time to the special effects, good. But I just wish that they had this stuff planned out already a little bit more efficiently. Like, there's got to be a balance. So, anyway, ultimately, this show is phenomenal. I love the direction. I love the tone. I think it looks beautiful. I think most of the visual effects are seamless. Here are my only 2 criticisms of the entire show. And one of them is, it's not a harsh criticism. It's a desire. So maybe this is a positive, that I want more of this. Maybe not necessarily a criticism. But I wish there was a little bit more from the clickers. Now, with that said, does that mean I want it to be like The Walking Dead, where every single episode we go into this building and we have to fight off zombies and it becomes monotonous and we just decide that they're no longer a threat and it's boring or what? No, that's not what I'm saying. I wish that we just had maybe another moment or another episode that sort of focused on that threat. But at the same time, and again, the reason why it's not a harsh criticism is whenever you have an apocalyptic show like this, the point of it, and this is something that The Walking Dead, I think, did okay with, I guess. At least their villains are iconic. But when you have a post-apocalyptic show like this, the point of it is that the real threat is probably humanity, right? Like, maybe humanity put us in the situation that we're facing in the first place. Now all hell is broken loose. There's zombies or clickers or whatever it is may be. But what that situation and setting turns people into, that makes them the greater threat in the show. And I respect that, and I agree with it. And that's why I think moments with humanity are just as thrilling and violent and scary as the ones with the clickers. I just wish there was a little bit more of the clickers in the show. Just a little bit. But, again, I understand why they did it, and I appreciate it, and I respect it. And ultimately, it's probably the better show for it. The only other thing that I wish I had a little bit more clarity on, and I said this, I think, a few weeks ago, I wish I got a greater sense as to what Fedra and the Fireflies were all about. Like, I get the basic premise, but I wished that both of them just had more of an identity in the show. And that's kind of it. Because it kind of just feels like clickers and Fedra and Fireflies, those are the things that make it The Last of Us. So I just wish there was a little bit more of The Last of Us in The Last of Us. But other than that, it's not like this journey and these characters aren't beloved, because that's not what I'm saying at all. I just think it kind of would have enhanced it a little bit more. But everything that we did get, I don't find flaw in. So at the end of the day, if I'm just asking for more things, but ultimately have no complaints about what we got, that's a great show. And I had a great time with it. And I thought Bella Ramsey was incredible. We already know Pedro Pascal is awesome, insanely watchable, but Bella Ramsey crushed it as Ellie. And I liked all the homages to the game, bringing some of those performance actors into different characters, playing that up a bit. I love that. And I think that was a great way to honor the game as well. And so, and again, I can't speak to it because I haven't played the game, so I really don't know what is and isn't different about it. I had my buddy Marco text me last night that he said he thinks he likes the show more having played the game than if he did having not played the game. I totally get that, but I think it's a wonderful show and it makes me want to play the game. And so I'm down. I'm playing Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, so I'm not going to act like I'm going to come on here and have The Last of Us beat next week. But at the end of the day, a great show is a great show. And, this is not like The Mandalorian. The viewership kept going up and up. And so shout out to Pedro Pascal. It's better if you see Pedro Pascal's face. At the end of the day, it is. The Last of Us, it's incredible. No complaints. Just a couple things I wish I saw more of. All right, let's talk about Shazam 2. I think that's everything. I said at the top that I wanted to talk about John Campea, but I don't think I want to. Let's just talk about Shazam 2. Shazam, the first Shazam is really good. I like it a lot, actually. It gave me a newfound fandom for the character of Shazam that I didn't really have growing up, because I didn't read Shazam comic books per se, but I love the idea. And I've rewatched that movie several times, and I actually think it is top 3 best Snyder-verse DC movies. It's between Wonder Woman and Shazam, probably in the top 2 or 3 spots, and I love it. I think it's great, the first one. So I was really excited to finally get it. 4 years later, I think. We waited a while for the sequel. Again, pandemic, all that. But I was excited to see it. And my only reservations, it's almost like I just knew that I shouldn't get tied to this movie, too attached, because of the incoming changes at Warner Brothers. But with that said, a movie's still a movie. And Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods, I still could have loved it, whether it gets a sequel or not. And but part of me knew, like, this might be the end. And again, that made me more hopeful for a great movie, because I didn't want it to just end on a bad note. And I don't know that I ever really gauged if the marketing was succeeding or not. I mean, of course, there were reports over the last few weeks that it was not tracking well, but I didn't really know what to make of that, because I don't really understand why. But the failure of Black Adam, I actually didn't see that as a sign, because people already had their trust in the Shazam movie. Now, was the first Shazam a monstrous hit? No. But it was something that we could trust and hopefully rely on, especially the people that enjoyed it, because I don't really know anybody that doesn't like that movie. Maybe they just are impartial. But I think the first Shazam, for the most part, is a really good movie that people enjoy. So I didn't really know what to make of the fact that this was going to maybe be worse than Black Adam's box office. I don't really know how. Black Adam was an awful movie. Awful. Shazam 2 is competent, but it's not good. If you saw my Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/rewatchryan. So I gave it 2.5 stars. And I do think, and I will admit, that part of this comes down to the fact that my attitude towards these franchises has been negative for the most part. Now, there are definitely parts of this movie that I liked, but I think in every way it pales in comparison to the original. And I just think that there were giant swings and misses with the story. And what kind of hurts the most is that David F. Sandberg, he's a really good director. Like, you can see really inspired choices in a lot of his sequences. And I think he knows this material very well. But there's also things that are in here that are just like glaringly bad and pale in comparison to the first movie. And there are things that people are going to like. The things that I didn't like, people I could see spin around and say that they like them and appreciate them and enjoy them. Some of the stuff that involves the humor and everything, it's a little too quirky to me. But and then I'll tell you what, I think it really comes down to this. And let's start off here. The relationship, Asher Angel, who plays Billy Batson, and Zachary Levi, who plays older Billy Batson, they play the same character. Now, one is an enhanced superhero and the other's not, but they play the same superhero. And it was very glaring to me that these two actors are not on the same page. And I've seen a couple of other people talking about this, and it's really true. And it stood out. I could have forgiven it in the first movie. In fact, I'm going to revisit the first movie with new eyes now that I have this on my mind. But it's glaringly obvious that they were not on the same page. Now, Zachary Levi, it's almost like his direction is just have fun being a man-child kid. But when Billy Batson is a kid, he has no fun. He's morose. And also, I don't feel as connected because I honestly think Asher Angel was in 2 or 3 scenes in this entire movie. Like, he's Shazam the whole time. And you don't really get a whole lot of time to spend with really any of the kids except Freddy. And he was a standout. But and I enjoy that actor. I'm blanking on his name right now from It Chapter 1. But Jack Dylan Grazer, he's always good. But the whole Asher, it really comes down to the Shazam. Asher Angel, Zachary Levi, they were not on the same page, and it just kind of felt like I was watching a different character, not the same character in 2 different versions. And that kind of sucked. It just kind of felt like a glaring, obvious, like, mishap. I don't know how you mess that up, and it's kind of disappointing. But the fact that you had so much of Billy Batson missing when I feel like his story is the heart of it, and then you go into this overly convoluted story with these 3 sisters who, the daughters of somebody, I honestly kind of lost track because they were out for vengeance, and then they wanted to do this, and they were after this, and then they were after that, and then it just kind of it was constant nonsense from them. And were they particularly bad? Did their costuming look bad? No, not really. But it just felt overly convoluted and insanely thin. This movie's very thin. It's hanging on for dear life. For competency. And it's a bloated mess that is missing a lot of what I enjoyed from the first movie. And look, it was good. I like the normal evolution. It was a normal response to highlight the adult versions of these characters more, but they kind of didn't do it in a way where they were still like not characters. Like, the only one who I think really stands out is Mary, which I have no problem with Mary. She's great. And then I forgot what the little one's name is, who the adult version's Megan Good. I think Megan Good is actually better at playing her character than Zachary Levi is playing Billy Batson. And that's a problem. But Megan Good is kind of like the third one. But the other guys are just kind of like, we took a second to make one gay. That's really it. So, I mean, I just have no attachment. It didn't get me on board with the new versions of the characters. And I didn't have anything to love. Rachel Zegler, I thought she did a great job from West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, but ultimately, I just want Marvel to pick her up and do something better with her. Hopefully. But at the end of the day, I just found it to be very thin. It wasn't funny. I didn't particularly love the action. A lot of the beats felt the same, actually. It kind of looked a lot like the first movie at times. And if anything, it looked worse. So I'm just really disappointed and bummed out. 2.5 stars. And I'll probably never watch it again. Yeah. I don't really see any rewatchability here. And I thought the way that it ties into the Snyder-verse was also terrible. And the people that are anti-James Gunn, pro-Snyder, again, missed the point that even when they try to implement the Snyder-verse, it actually doesn't work at all. And not that James Gunn did it, because apparently that was done before him again. But it's just, again, another sign that we need to move on. And at the end of the day, I'm just really kind of heartbroken, actually. Not as heartbroken as I was by Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but Shazam 2 didn't make me actively angry the way that Quantumania did. So there's a plus, I guess. That's really all that I have to say about Shazam 2: Fury of the Gods. Not a great year for superhero movies so far. Jesus Christ. And the box office report, I mean, it might not do as well as Black Adam. I don't know how. At least there's joy to this movie. I don't understand what's going on right now with franchises and people's relationships with them. It's kind of weird. But anyway, this is why sometimes you just need to play Red Dead Redemption and not pay attention. So far, the best movie of the year is Creed 3. I'm obviously missing a ton of movies. I have a lot of catching up to do because I think I've seen 6 total this year. But Creed 3 is the best 2023 release so far. That's all I got, guys. That's all I got. You can go to this QR code. Well, I'm going to stop here. Get a free trial from audible.com. You can also go to Movie Palette. I don't have my Movie Palette right here. Go to moviepalette.com and you can get 15% off at checkout with the promo code REWATCH15. Moviepalette.com, promo code REWATCH15. Go find a Movie Palette, hang it up in your apartment or house. Take a picture of it, send it to me if you want. I appreciate it, guys. Again, social media at RewatchRyan. Go to my Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/RewatchRyan. And that was my quick and breezy podcast. A lot of DC Warner Brothers talk, unfortunately. But anyway, guys, I think I'll see you later this week when me and Brandale sit down and do another Hot Takes and Sausage. I appreciate you. Love you.